Good evening. My name is Dana Mattias. I'm the Interim Executive Director at the Duluth Art Institute, organizer of this weekend's program, which features Wendy Redstar's solo exhibition, Reservation Pop, in our galleries upstairs. The artist as culture, producer, lecturer, and book signing right here, right now, tonight. And Sharon's artist workshop tomorrow morning at the Duluth Art Institute's Lincoln Building. The program received generous support from the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation's Anishinaabe Fund and Adams Art Fund, as well as the University of Minnesota Duluth's American Indian Studies Department, so I'd like to thank them for making this possible. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Wendy Redstar and Sharon Louden, two rock star artists with extensive bios. Wendy Redstar, to my right here, has traveled from Portland, Oregon to be with us tonight. Wendy holds an MFA from UCLA, has exhibited throughout the U.S. and abroad, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Portland Art Museum, St. Louis Art Museum, the Minneapolis Institute of Art, many more. She's also served as visiting lecturer at Yale University, the Banfest Center, Dartmouth College, CalArts, numerous other places. Wendy's work explores intersections of Native American ideologies and colonial structures, both historically and today. She was raised on the Crow Reservation in Montana, and her exhibit upstairs features images of the cars and HUD houses there, and we're honored to have it on view here at the Duluth Art Institute through November 12th. Sharon Louden is here with us tonight from New York City, also has a long list of credentials.
Please make it brief. It makes me feel very old.
Oh no. Sharon's a senior critic at the New York Academy of Art, a consultant for the Joan Mitchell Foundation, was, and I gotta flip my page, was a contributor to the National Endowment for the Arts Creativity Connects campaign. Sharon holds an MFA from Yale University School of Art, has exhibited with the Tweed Museum here in town, as well as Carnegie Mellon University, Weissman Art Museum, National Gallery of Art, and many more. Her work is in the collections including the Whitney Museum, the National Gallery of Art, Yale University Art, Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and others. So, in addition to being an artist, Sharon is also this amazing author with a new book, The Artist as Culture Producer, Living and Sustaining a Creative Life, and it features 40 international contemporary artists, including Wendy, showcasing their stories of adding to creative economies, and it's available to purchase tonight from Zenith Bookstore in the back corner there. So tonight, Sharon and Wendy are going to address a whole range of topics in that book, and for those that want to participate on social media, use the hashtag #LiveSustain. So please join me in welcoming Wendy Redstar.
So first, I just want to say we've done this before. And I feel really humbled and grateful to be here. Annie Dugan. We met through this wonderful woman named Annie Labowitz, who's also a big supporter of my books. And Annie Dugan was so wonderful to put one of my films in her film festival. And we stayed in touch, and then when I started planning this tour, we were upstairs in our office and brainstorming, and we know that there's a large community of natives who live here, and so we thought that it would be great for Wendy to come here, but also just because of who Wendy is and her work and everything about her. And so I can't believe we're here today, and I have to thank you very much, and everybody at Duluth Art Institute for their great efforts in getting us both here, because it's really a pleasure and a treat. And I love Duluth, and I love all the people here in Duluth, and I'm so happy to be with all of you. So today, or tonight, what we're going to do is just spend a few minutes having a conversation with one another. But before I do, I just want to give you a context, and if you mind if I just talk about the context of the book for a second.
Sure.
This book that I did, The Artist as Culture Producer, came out of a book I did before called Living and Sustaining Creative Life. And how that started was I was serving on a panel at the College Art Association. Has anybody ever heard of that organization? It's an organization of like 14,000 people, I think it is, from all over the world. And the panel was how to make a living with or without a dealer. And 400 people showed up at that panel. I'll never forget saying to that saying to the audience, I say, it's really great that you're here, and it really sucks that you're here, because you're dependent on the system by 400 people showing up. This is amazing. Well, one of the people in the audience was my publisher. You never know who's in the audience. So she came up to me and said, we really want you to do a book. And I said, I cannot write at all. Can't write an artist statement. Can't write anything. So the artist in the audience, you know what I mean, right? It's like the hardest thing to write. I can't. My husband, this is my husband, Vince Blake, I hear. He doesn't think I can write either. So I was like, I can't write this book. So anyway, but what's great about being married for a long time, we're going to have our 19th wedding anniversary coming up, is that I think the key to being married is never listen to your husband. So my husband, you can't do a book. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do a book. So 4 years later, now that book came out in 2013. It's in its 7th printing. We took a 62 stop book tour all over the country. I met 5,000 people on that tour. I decided to make that tour somewhat sustainable. So what I did was I said every artist in that book has to get their own copyright, and we split the royalties 44 ways and make it a shared project. With this book, we have a 94 stop book tour, and today I think it's like I should have remembered, I think it's like the 46th stop out of 94. And this tour is about cross-pollinating artists together. It's about bringing Wendy to a place. Have you ever been to Duluth? I have not. Never been here before, right? To meet all of you, to be able to hopefully lay seeds down where we are, to be able to share information so that people can try to sustain and grow. I'm doing the same thing where it's a shared project, and this tour is about basically making those connections to make stronger the fabric that we have as our community. It's very important. Connecting with one another, exhibition opportunities. This show came about because of our conversation with Annie and this book. I'm interested in that. So all of you, if you don't know one another here, you must meet one another, because you never know what will happen, and the strength of our community is ourselves. So going into that, then I want to talk about this great exhibition you have upstairs first, and then I want to ask Wendy how she sustains a creative life. Wendy and I met because of actually a curator who lives in Minneapolis named Jennifer Phelps, who I asked her, I said, I really want to have more powerful women in this book. And she said, oh, you should look at Wendy Red Star. And I said, really? She's really powerful? She said, yes, she's very powerful. You should look at her work. She's very powerful. And then Wendy took my call, and I think what's great about the Artist Cabal is that artists will take calls from other artists. And she was so open to it, and then we've continued conversation ever since. But we did do a conversation at the Q Art Foundation on July 13th, and there she also had an exhibition. And I was just joking earlier that, because we're going to be in Tulsa, Oklahoma together in November on the tour, and I was just joking, maybe the Philbrook should have an exhibition. We'll just go wherever you have an exhibition. But the exhibition that you have at the Q is really different than this one here. And the exhibition at the Q, if I can just describe for you, not that I want to revisit that entirely, but it's interesting how these two bodies of work feels different to me, but also under one umbrella. That was like a timeline, right, from your history, from your family history. And then upstairs is also from your family, right, or family members or community in Montana. Can you talk a little bit about the premise of what's upstairs, and why are there all those cars up there?
Hi everyone. It's good to be here, and I also want to say thank you to the Duluth Art Institute and also the Native American Studies program at, oh my gosh, UMD. Yeah, so upstairs the title of the exhibition is called Reservation Pop, and I, in believe 2008, took a series of photographs on my reservation in Montana of the what we call reservation cars, which are basically these non-functioning, sort of broken down vehicles, and the HUD houses, government-built houses. And the reason why I started on the project was firstly because of the res cars. I wanted to know like the stories, because I'm sure you've put a dent in your car at one point in your life, and maybe there was an interesting story behind that. But basically, most of the photos were taken in the town of Pryor, which has about 500 people. And there's 2 blocks, very tiny blocks, not like New York City blocks, of these HUD houses. And what I noticed is that each house had at least one res car, if not 3 or 4 cars, and they're all kind of parked right up towards the door or on the sidewalk. And I also noticed just from growing up there that the cars functioned, had a life after their normal function, like they were storage cars, that kind of thing. So I set out to kind of figure out like, what was going on with these cars and who was the last person to leave it in that spot. And it sort of took me on this interesting adventure. And the houses, the thing that I love about the houses is that they come in these very vibrant colors. And so I wanted to document that, where you'd have a very conservative, like crow man living in a hot pink house. And I was always wondering, like, what's going on with that? And I asked my dad, and he said, well, it's the cheapest paint that they could get in the greatest amount of quantity. So they ended up painting the houses all these different colors. So yeah, it was really more an investigation of all of those things that I brought up.
So it's interesting, all of your work has stories, they're all about stories, essentially, right? So can you give a story about one of the cars?
Yeah, there's actually lots of stories. There's a car up there, a blue car, that is actually my uncle's car, and his name is Spunky. And he was driving and he hit a deer. And my dad's place wasn't too far from where he hit the deer, and he parked it at my dad's house, and he said, I'll come and pick it up next weekend. And then like 10 years later, the car was still there, and like in between that time, Spunky would come and visit, and it was like the car didn't exist or something, you know, it never came up. And finally my dad was like, okay, we've got to do something about this vehicle. Yeah.
And what's the reason for tell me about the fabric. Like what kind of fabric is it, and why did you choose that?
So the way the fabric ties in for me is that even though, you know, you might look at these broken down cars and sort of the rundown houses, and maybe your first thought might be like poverty. For me, the Crow Nation is culturally rich, and so I sort of associate that to our material culture, and we have this event that we have every 3rd week in August called Crow Fair, that is a time when we all kind of gather and parade and set up teepees. And so for me, when I think about the reservation, I think about my grandmother, who outfitted us in traditional outfits, and she always used this sort of satin fabric for under our dresses. So to me, it's that sort of kind of richness that I wanted to place these sort of broken down objects on top of that, because visually when you see them, you see a pop of color. And so that's kind of what I want people to focus on.
Was there any kind of symbolic connection between, let's say, a color of a house and then the color of the fabric, or?
No, I just kind of, that was more like aesthetics for me.
Yeah. And some of them, it's so interesting, so I'm looking at my phone because I just took pictures of, I'm not checking my email. I'm looking at And I see that, yeah, there's a couple of them were mesmerizing because they have this sort of sheen to them. Was that purposeful too?
Yeah, they're actually, the tricky thing about that work is it's really hard to photograph too.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
You don't really get that kind of plays with your camera a little bit. But yeah, I wanted that kind of magpie feeling where you get some of those bright fabrics.
So
why did you show that? So you showed this body work in Bethel.
Yeah.
So what made you want to show that here? Like, what do you think?
I had just completed it, and this is kind of getting into the book and the topic that I have been sort of producing a lot of work since like 2016 and into this year, and I thought it would be really nice, instead of just building a whole new body of work, to actually get to like see this work again. Because oftentimes, you'll spend a lot of time on a body of work and it shows once. And I didn't really get to spend that much time with it in Bethel. So it's really great to kind of see it come alive again here.
And we were talking upstairs a little bit about how I asked Wendy, I said, did you specifically specify where these pieces went? And you said no, you let the curators do that. And so can you talk about that process too, like allowing that to happen? Because you were mentioning to me too that some of your friends just don't do that.
Yeah. No, I thought it was really good because at Bethel, I also did that with the curator, sort of kind of in that space. I said, I kind of envision a grid system and then a linear along this wall, but it's up to you how you want to formulate it. And then the same here, I was like, you've got the pieces, go for it. So what's nice about that for me is I feel like I get to learn something, or I get to see the work through other people's eyes and how they kind of place images together. And I think you guys did a really wonderful job. So that's something that, I don't know, you spend a lot of time kind of figuring out the work. It's kind of nice to release it a little bit.
That's great.
So I'm going to go off script, as I've done before. I hope that's all right with you. So you just did a residency, right? I saw you in July.
Yeah.
And then we were in New York together in July. And then I remember you telling me you were going back to Portland for a couple days. And then you went off and did a residency. What did you do at that residency then?
So it was called an Indigenous Intensive Artist Residency at UBC in Canada. And I think for me, artist residencies aren't that successful for me, as far as getting work done. But this one was really great. It was a bunch of not just Native artists, but also people who were writers and filmmakers, that kind of thing. So it was 2 weeks, and we got together and kind of shop ideas around that kind of thing. So it was fun. It was the first time I've ever done just an Indigenous specific residency.
The reason why I ask that is I wonder if you, as just in the way that you work, so you have this exhibition. This exhibition, did it leave before that residency, or how? I mean, I wonder if you think about that while you're working in a residency or in your studio, your work being elsewhere. What happens when the work is like in Duluth and you're in Portland or in this residency, or do you just forget about it? Do you still think about it being there, or what happens as far as as an artist sort of compartmentalizing where your work goes and what you're thinking about at any given time?
Yeah.
That's a hard question. I'm sorry that it came out like that. But I guess the reason why I'm saying is it went from Bethel to Duluth. It just makes me think, and I think your work is like place, and it just seems like it's global.
That's nice to hear. Just because I rent like a tiny house, it's feeling tiny because I'm filling it up, but it's 825 square feet, and I use my living room as my studio space. So for me, part of it is like, if I can get the work out there and keep it going, then I don't have the boxes. Like, it's very practical.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Wait a minute, I'm not sure if I want this piece to come back. This opportunity came, that would be good to have it go there.
Wow.
So that's part of it as well. But yeah, I think for me, it's interesting to think about the work and where it's traveled, because some places I don't get to go. And like for instance, I have a body of work called The Four Seasons that I actually did when I was in graduate school at UCLA. So they're like about 11 years old. And they've traveled everywhere. And one's going to be showing in Nevada, and another one in Tucson, and then it's going to California. And I was like, wow, I wish I could travel like that body of work.
Within.
It's seen so many places. It like knows way more than I do. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. Or I feel like my work is really personal. It's about stories and things like that, and just to kind of lead those stories in different places is also something that I think about a lot.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that before on the phone. I hope you don't mind me just asking that in public. So I want to talk about, we're here in Duluth. We're in a smaller community than, let's say, Los Angeles. And you live in Portland. And I wanted to ask you, this community here, as I was mentioned, Dana mentioning the show I did at the Tweed, this is a vibrant community of artists that are here. And I just wanted to ask you, how do you work in your community? You know, how do you work in Portland? And you said you have that 800 square foot house. What's it like to engage in that community, to have that exchange in that community? I just wanted to be able to see if you can share some of that perspective to this community. Maybe it reflects what they do here or not.
Yeah, I think for me, how I ended up in Portland was I have an ex-husband, so that's how I ended up there. And he is still teaching at Portland State University. So I have a daughter, and she's 10. So for me, I really moved to Portland for those reasons. And I don't show really with a gallery or anything in Portland, but some of the things I do is I sit on like Regional Arts and Culture Council, which is gives out a lot of grants. So that's one way that I get to connect. And then I also mentor graduate students at PNCA, Pacific Northwest College of Art. But I think one thing that has helped me is, since I don't have a gallery space and I tend to show everywhere, that I feel like the Portland art community sees me as an asset to bring in and sit on panels and things like that. So that's been really nice as well.
Do you engage with a lot of artists in Portland then?
I have a set group of friends who are artists, but they're also mothers. So that's the group that I engage with. So we're all art moms. And it's a great group. There's about 7 of us, and we all had kids around the same time. And we could all kind of have these sessions where we talk about some of the things that are hardships, and then it's been great then to support each other with different shows or things like that.
That's great. I didn't know that. That's amazing. Every time I talk to you on these things, I learn something else. It's incredible. So about your community, can we talk about creating opportunities? So we have talked about, well, I should say this first. The book itself, The Artist as Culture Producer, the reason why it's named that book is that when I did the first tour, as I mentioned, I met a lot of people. A lot of the public still thinks that artists haven't taken a shower in a couple of days or a week, that we have paint stuck in our hair, and we can't complete sentences. I'm trying to do that right now. And so that bothered me a lot. And what I would say, actually, instead of introducing somebody in the audience or talking about artists, I would say culture producers, and the public would be like, what is that? But if I said artists, like, I know what that is. That was that reaction. On the other side of the coin, I had artists who would come to me and say, how do you get a gallery? Because that was the only way they thought how to sustain a creative life. That drove me crazy. And one artist in particular, but several actually, but one in particular came to me and said, you can't do other things and still have a gallery. Like, you can't do these books, you can't curate, you can't do all these other things and have a gallery. I was like, are you high? Of course you can. So instead of just saying, are you high, right? I said, I'm gonna do a book to prove that. So the book itself is 40 artists that not only have a leg in the art world, but they also do other things that but gives within a community and gives to other artists. And in fact, some people, I've been very flattered, some people have come to me and they have said, hi Sharon, I would love to be in your book, very flattering. And the first thing I say to them, do you give to other artists? And if they don't say anything within 5 seconds, I say, I'm done, I gotta get out of here. So it's like, I think that is a prerequisite for me, essentially. All of my friends are givers, and so is Wendy, and everybody in this book is generous. I think generosity yields generosity. I do think communities grow because of those things. Now, can you talk a little bit about, and this is in your essay, you've curated exhibitions. You give, like you just said, you serve on panels at, I know they don't pay that much, or if anything, and I know you're not doing it for that. And you participate in your communities, whether it be Portland or on the Crow Reservation or elsewhere. Can you talk a little bit about all those things that you do?
Yeah, well, actually, a good example currently at the Missoula Art Museum. I just curated a show that's going to open on September 12th, and it focuses on 4 Native women artists. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. But one of the things I really wanted to do, especially with the election, kind of, I think, really made me want to focus on really supporting the artists that I believe in. And so the 4 women that are in this exhibition are artists that I really believe in their career, and I wanted to bring them along as well. So that's one of the things that I've done. But I've also curated a few other contemporary Native artist shows, one in Seattle and the other in Utah. So yeah, that's been primarily my focus as far as giving back, I would say.
But you also have this great collaborator who's 10 years old.
Oh, yeah, my kid.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I started collaborating with my daughter when she was 7, and so we did a show at the Portland Art Museum together. And that was sort of came out of a fluke where I was working on this body of work and happened to give her photocopies of what I was working on, and then she came back with this amazing drawing, and I thought, wait a minute, this is a good thing that I can use to kind of close the show. But the game changer was at the opening, she wanted to talk about her work, and I was like, okay, we'll do this. I'll appease you. You agreed to be in the show. I guess I'll give you some time to talk. And she's an excellent public speaker. So I was kind of like, whoa, okay, so maybe we can do something. So usually how it works is if I get an opportunity, sometimes I'll ask her, it's like, hey, I'm doing something here. Do you have any interest? And she'll say, yeah, I want to be part of that. So we worked together at the Tacoma Art Museum. We led a collaborative tour of one of their collections. We've done a photo shoot at the Seattle Art Museum. We did a residency at the Denver Art Museum for 5 months, and she did a kids tour. And at, I think it's Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. I hope I'm just saying that right. We're actually going to be doing a tour of a show that's happening there and a joint lecture. Together, yeah. So it's been really great, but as soon as she gets older, it's pretty much up to her. I'm already starting not to be cool. I got ditched on the playground last week. So it's already kind of changing for me, but who knows, we'll see.
So is she, when you do the lecture together, does she say, okay, Mom, I'm going up there and talking? Or I would love to see her in action.
She would like to do that. I think she'd like to do a lecture by herself, but there are some boundaries. And usually we've done several lectures together, which has been really great. So usually I'll set up the PowerPoint, and then when we get to her particular works, she'll talk about that, and then she'll kind of say what aspects of the project she wants to talk about. So we go back and forth between each other. Yeah.
So great, I love that. I could hear that 50 times what you just said. Yeah, because it sounds so magical in a lot of ways. Like to have art in childhood, but then have collaboration with your mom. I mean, that's pretty amazing. So I want to talk just a little bit about, and then we're going to open up to the audience because a big part of this tour is exchange with all of you. So just imagine that we're either at a coffee shop or a bar or whatever. We're relaxed. But if you can think of also some questions while we're talking would be great, especially if some questions that pertain to your own lives or issues as artists that you want to be able to share to be able to see if what kind of response we can get from Wendy. But let's talk about success. I would love to talk about success. On this tour, people have talked about what success means. And on my first book, I asked most of the contributors what they thought success is and was. And they said that success is having the freedom to make their work. It was consistent. Had nothing to do with money. And in fact, I just got in a Facebook fight. It's still up on my page. You can see it, it's public. That someone was just making that statement, basically that it is money. But I would love to find out, what you think success is for you, and what you see the link is between all artists. Whether whatever the I actually don't think success defines. I think it actually creates divisions between people or what they think. What do you think?
Well, I actually thought that was a really great part of your book. But yeah, in graduate school, when I was going there in 2006, success, the way they kind of pumped out all the grad students was that you had to get a gallery. So you had to get a gallery, and it was sort of kind of funny too, because the students were like, if you're a professor, then you're a failure. But then we had these rock star professors, so I don't know what they were talking about. But right when I left graduate school, there was sort of like a roadmap. You had to do these artist residencies to build your CV, and you had to get in this gallery, and then you're famous. And that was not the case for me. So I think I had to work on that for a bit because that's what we were pumped out to do. But for me, I think it's exactly what you said. It's being supported and being able to make the work that I want to make. And also, for me, it's I'm also kind of getting over like being in that specific show, like the Whitney or something like that. I think it really does go back to just being supported and the interest that I have, which is really lucky.
I think that the reason I cringed about the gallery, I mean, I have galleries, you work with galleries too, I think they're partners, they're not the end all. And I think that it's sad that graduate school had given that formula because everybody is different, right? Would you say that? Like every artist is different?
No, yeah, absolutely. Like for me, they only gave out one model, and I have friends who, like for instance, my ex-husband does social practice. So he's got a whole different route. He doesn't make things that you sell, so galleries don't really work for him, but he's found success. So there's all sorts of different ways you can be supported.
I just would wonder what happened to your classmates, where they are today, if those formulas ever worked.
Some of them have done that formula, and some of them that were really hot in graduate school, had a bunch of curators and things like that in their studios, aren't making work at all. Like I know one guy who runs like a Boys and Girls Club, which I thought was kind of cool, but I totally thought he was going to be that sort of next art star.
I don't think that's a necessary failure because he took his creativity and used something with it. But I do think the old ideas of, if you were teaching, you're a failure, that's old.
Yeah.
I actually don't even believe there's any job, you're not any less than an artist.
Yeah.
So I feel like these are old ideas that need to be fleshed out. That's good to hear. Okay, so I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna open up to the audience, and we can pass around a microphone, or you can just shout out.
The microphone has to stay there.
Oh, it does?
So
So maybe I'll repeat the question. But would anybody like to just say hello? You can even just say hello. How are you? Anybody have a thought? Yes, sir. Hi. That's it. Yes, Adam. Hi.
I guess Wendy, you were talking about having interactions with those houses and the people who had the cars and things. I guess besides the daycare house and your uncle or whatever, that funny guy, his house, did you like interact with the people who own those places, or were they just take photos? And then also, I was wondering like what you took those photos with.
Yeah, it was like a kind of a real budget digital camera, so it wasn't anything special. But yeah, because I would just be out in the street, a lot of people it's like a small town, they're super nosy. They like know you're there as soon as like you enter the block. They're like, someone's out there. A lot of people came up and, I would ask them specifically, and I'd get all sorts of stories about the cars or whatever. And I have cousins that are quite younger than me, and anytime they see the work, they're like, this is so-and-so's house, and this is blah-blah's house, and that's where like my basketball is, that they didn't give back to me or something like that. So I like hearing their sort of stories, but just being here in Duluth, talking to people, they were telling me, oh yeah, like just not too far away, on this reservation, there's a set of houses like this. So it's kind of nice to hear that. Yeah.
Annie.
Can you talk about the size? Because I found the photos to be, like, I love the intimacy of them. You see so many large scale photos, and I really thought that the size was, anyway, if you could talk a little bit about how you chose that.
Yeah, it was more, like I knew they were going to be on sort of this vibrant background. So I wanted the size to be something where people would come up closer. Because the closer you get, the more like, I don't know, some of you saw like there's like muddy handprints on one car, or if you look at the windows in the houses, they have those like sort of serape blankets, that kind of thing. So there's really more to get people to engage with them on a more intimate level by having them that size.
That's a great question. These are great questions. Other questions?
I actually want to.
Please keep going.
Are you going to talk a little bit more about the next, because so Vincent told you not to write a book, and now you've written two, and you have more in the...
I have a lot more in the pipeline. That's true. So my third book is called Last Artist Standing, Artist Over 50. Everybody seems to laugh at that. Everybody responds to that. It's actually the hardest thing I've ever done, because the people over 50, I'm 53, people over 50 have a lot to say. And it's been very challenging for me. And some artists are not happy over 50 as they get older. It's very difficult, but it's awesome. I'm happy to do it, but I'm really going to be really happy to get that published. And then I'm in the smack in the middle of that book. And then my fourth book is not titled yet. I'm co-editing with an African-American young critic. She's 25 years younger than me, named Jessica Lynn. We're both co-editing a book about the whole of the art world. We're picking out different people like museum curators, critics, gallerists, nonprofit people, funders, etc. Because when I go on these tours, artists give so much power to these people. And they have ideas of these people that existed like in the 1950s. So the only way to do this is to be able to find people that, first of all, they're all human beings. Second of all, to find them who's generous and who is actually setting the bar for the field. And then I just signed a contract to do senior editing of Living and Sustaining Creative Life, 10 books of a series for 10 years. And giving contracts to other editors who will do Living and Sustaining Creative Life Dance, poetry, writing, a lot of the arts. And so I really feel like if I have an opportunity, I need to share it. And when I had other opportunities, I told my publisher, I need other people to take this on at this point. Thanks for asking that. And as I say all of that, it makes me want to throw up. It's a lot of work, but it's awesome. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Thanks. To meet people like Wendy, who can share her story. The people I work with are very generous enough to be able to say what they've done in their life, enough that people can then take parts of Wendy's story and replicate that to be able to sustain their own lives. That's the goal.
Impacted your own work, and do you have time to make your own work?
Have I say what?
How has being an author impacted your
How's an author being? So I'm an artist, for sure. So a lot of people ask me that question. I'm an artist who likes to work all the time, not necessarily in the studio. So as my husband says, artists live in the cracks. I'm actually going to have a real studio that I have to be in starting on September 12th in New York, because I got a studio residency in New York City, and that's going to be really interesting for me, because I've never been an artist where I'm fixed to a space. I've always had a studio, but I like to go in and out, and I like to be free. So I often work on site, like I did the show at the Tweed where I worked on site. Or the other day with a friend, we drew together at a restaurant. I sort of like doing that more. I do animation off-site, so I always do something. And I think being an artist, the things I do, books, curating, working in nonprofits, all the things I do are extension of the work I do, if you would say, in and out of the studio. But that's a great question, thanks. People ask me that all the time, because I think that time management is also interesting. I think that's really challenging. How do you manage your time?
Alerts like you have this thing. Depends on my health, because I travel a lot, and yeah, everyone should try to get as much sleep and eat well.
Thank you for asking, Karen. Any questions? Yes, sir. Hi.
You're writing a book about artists over 50.
Yes.
I remember reading somewhere, I can't quote it offhand, that an artist's creative peak is before the age of 30. And so anything after that, they're just going over old stuff. Do you find the artists you talk to are doing that or feel like they're doing that?
No
I'm
way.
50, so.
No way. First of all, I wonder if that's the market telling you that and not other artists.
Could well be.
Very much. That, I think, is a myth. Wouldn't you say that?
That would be horrible if that was true.
No, the artists I'm talking to, first of all, there are too many there's not too many artists. I think there should be more artists. Okay, first of all. Second of all, but there's too many for me to choose from to get 40. That's exceptional. It's a very hard book for me to do. And I have certain criteria that I have that that brings it down to, like this book that Wendy's in, I went from 400, there's a lot more than 400. Anyway, no, the artists that I have, and part of the criteria is that they are able to make work through generations. And no way, these are contemporary artists who are doing great things. They would probably answer that question and say, well, what I did at 30 is just different than what I'm doing today. Not any better or not any worse. And what do you think about that? Like, that comment does, I think, reflect the market.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think the more I progress, I made the series in graduate school that gets shown quite a bit, but I think for me, that piece was sort of a critique on the way institutions display Native American objects and people, and when I made that piece, I was told it would never show, and I got really harsh critique and my fellow grad students, but it's probably been it's the most popular piece, and I feel it's like the institutions are just now, especially for the topic I was talking about, are just now starting to think about this concept forward. What I'm making now, I don't know, it's interesting the way that kind of work plays out that way. So what I guess I'm saying is I don't want to be making the work that I made back then. Yeah, because I keep learning and progressing forward.
You know, I actually look back and I'm embarrassed about some of that work. Like, thank God I didn't show it. And so it's just with age, what I'm learning about the research in this book, and just even myself, and maybe you would agree with this too, you don't care as much about the small stuff. So there's that lack of pretension or lack of, being so serious about what you're doing. And so there's a certain freedom and confidence that there is. And so in some ways, I bet if you ask me that on the tour in 2020, I'm going on that tour in 2020, if you ask me that question, these people who are very opinionated, over 50, that's the other thing. That people are extremely opinionated because they have the confidence to say things versus people in their 20s, right? That they would probably say, they probably would say it's the best work they've done. Because, and it also goes back to success. Like, what is the measure of success for people equating or the value of it?
That's good to hear.
As an artist who finds it difficult sometimes to get critique, like how do you get critique? I mean, is it from market or from Facebook or just your self-critique? Or I guess I don't know. Like, how do you get critique now?
Oh my God, I would freak out if Facebook critiqued my work. You're not on there right now. No.
I noticed that today.
I think for me, where I'm at now, I don't really want to be critiqued. Like, I'd rather go to my people that I value their opinions and have just a conversation with them than have sort of that discussion, I don't know, like graduate school has to come in and work with graduate students, and I get graduate flash. But yeah, I think for me, I just, especially since I'm native, there's not that many people I can talk to in Portland, so I have a lot of First Nations friends, that kind of thing, that I have a little kind of online community. And so every once in a while I'll Skype with somebody about a particular project or something like that. So I'd much prefer doing it that way, through just a direct conversation.
I mean, for me, because I'm on the road all the time, also I just don't like studio visits. I hate them. So with anybody. I didn't even have my husband come in my studio for 10 years. I'm not kidding. So it's I'm uncomfortable with that, but I just put myself in this position, which I just got at the studio at the Sharp Valentis program in New York. And I'm going to part of the proposal was to force myself to open the door. And so I'm going to do that. Okay, I have to get medication. But I think that the reason for that is when you stay too isolated, it's really hard, I think, to come out of that. And I had 3 studio visits in 3 years, over the course of 3 years, and they were all really hard for me, and I felt worse. And so I think it's a balance. I think you have to find a balance of people to talk to that you trust, as you said, or people, let's say, online. I have a lot of conversations about artwork via Instagram. And then I really just call my friends and talk to them and maybe send them pictures and say, what do you think of this? And, but I never do it before a big exhibition because it can sway directions, or when I feel really bad about myself at some point, crappy. How about you? How do you time the critique?
I never I used to do this when I was younger, and my mom's my worst art critic, so I have to gear myself up for her if I really want the truth. But I used to do this where I'd have a half-baked idea, and I'll give my mom as an example, and I tell her, you know exactly what it looks like in your mind, but when you're sort of trying to talk to them about it, so she would always it would always get deflated before I could actually make it, I changed my mind. So my thing is I never like to tell people any half-baked ideas at all. Otherwise, maybe they're in just like a super weird stage that only I understand. It's like, I don't think I'd put something that's out there quite like half-baked yet, because you want to have that kind of magic still, and freedom to take that wherever.
All right, just a couple, any more questions? Oh, now we've got some, we're warmed up. Yes.
How you both learned how to write about your work, and how the story that you've told about your work has changed over time.
You know, I'm a terrible writer.
That's not true.
Horrible writer.
Okay, that's not true.
Yeah, but
I mean, you have an essay in a published book.
yeah,
It's in its second printing.
well, thank you. But I've wised up. I've realized like where my strengths are and where they're not. And I actually have this woman that I work with. So she still makes me write stuff, but then she'll go in and she'll look at it for me and help me get it to like where it can actually be published, you know? So yeah, for me, that's like one of the things that was the hardest for me is actually writing about the work. So that was my solution, is to actually find an arts writer to help me.
I think having a good editor is the best thing ever. My husband, Vincent, is an editor for me. Yeah, we had a question back here, I think. Is there a question back here? Over here? Yes.
I was actually pointing to make
No question.
But no, I have like 15 questions.
Oh, can you pick one?
I'm going to pick one. As I'm sitting here writing these notes, how do you guys you're talking about making connections and getting around more positive people that can help you and help you with your career. I find that fascinating because it doesn't happen around here. And the other thing is how do you make connections to get into museums and bigger galleries?
I can answer both of those questions. Can I start? Okay.
Sure.
I love making connections that result in impact. I do it every day. I'm proud of it. As a catalyst, I think every artist is a catalyst for other artists. It can be. Now, why the flag that I just heard, I just got this pain in my chest when you said it doesn't happen here. I mean, that makes me feel really sad because it just means then people aren't getting out of their isolation to offer something. So first of all, the first thing is every artist has their assets and something to give. Even if they feel like they've never shown before, that they don't have any presence anywhere, every artist has something to give. Every artist does. Now what does that mean? It means that the work that we do in our studios, we make things from nothing, right? Everybody knows that, right? Artists? We can make things from nothing. We can also bounce back from failure like that, right? If we make a mistake on the piece, we could just change it, right? Why can't we replicate that outside of our studios is beyond me. And why is it that we are able to just start things and live freely in our studios and somehow when it comes to talking to other people, that just doesn't translate, but it can. So I think the metaphor here is real, meaning that if you really want to be able to cultivate a community, you need to be in a position to do so. So number one, create a position to do that. What does that mean? Duluth Art Institute is artist friendly. Somebody can develop a relationship with Dana and say, Dana, I really want to have a group of people here to be able to share opportunities with. Can you do that? Dana would probably say, sure, you can sit in the gallery and do that, right? I'm forcing that. Then the second thing is, it's about organization and intention, just like we do in our studios. The second thing is, figure out what you need. Answer what you need. What do you need? Everybody needs money, right? We all need money. But the thing about money is that that's a given. What do we need for our own validation? Do we want grants? Do we want opportunities? Where do we that down and then find a way to be able to research opportunities, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow from 12 to 4. I mean 10 to 4. That's all I'm talking about tomorrow, is I'm laying it out how everybody can do it on their own. 80% of the things I've gotten in my life are from cold calls. Not physically picking up the phone, although I have done that. Do not ever do that. But I think reaching out to people, it works. It's just a matter of cultivating community and making the right fit. Finding out what you need first, being organized, do the research, do the work, and find the fit. And it's not a lot of work. And I think you can cultivate a large community. But it comes with starting to be able to make that happen and not expect somebody to knock on your door. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
That was a lot, sorry.
No, I think you did good with that, yeah.
I'll have
If there's like an artist whose work really resonates with me, I'll try to reach out to them and talk with them. Or I've had other artists do that. And some of them are my really good friends now. So I think that's important just as an artist. Especially since I tend to do identity-based artwork, it's good to reach out to artists who are kind of working in similar themes as you and build networks that way.
Yeah, I think it's about making that intention, though, to make that leap out. Okay, one more question. Yes?
I'm wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about rejection.
Right.
And,
I can talk about that a lot, too, but go ahead.
yeah. That's it.
Well, one of the ways I make a living is by applying to grants. And I've gotten really good where, like, my tactic for applying for a grant is I'll apply to it and then I try to forget about it. And then I'll make sure I apply to something, like several other things, and forget all about those things. And then usually, if I don't get it, I don't take it personally because I used to work for a grants arts organization. And I kind of got to see the behind the scenes. And it's just like there's several different dynamics that go into like who's going to be on the panel, what kind of funding they're bringing in, and maybe some artists fit that more than others. And that also helped me not kind of take those things so personally. But I also think rejection is, for me, I've learned to embrace it as something, as a positive. Like if I don't get that, then I know there's something greater that's going to come around the corner for me. And so I always try to kind of look at it that way instead of getting really upset about it.
I don't think there's any such thing as rejection. It's a difference of opinion. I say it all the time. Why do I say that way? I think rejection is too personal. So, the behind scenes, it's not personal. I don't think. Does anybody in the scenes that, in the grant panels we don't have anybody that says, oh, I hate that person, so I'm going to not give them that grant. In your experience?
Usually I do that when I'm But I've also learned that, sometimes you're just, the people on the panel, their arts focus isn't, what you're doing.
It's random.
So yeah, I guess that's the thing is thinking of it more as business, even though your art is highly personal to yourself, but
right.
You can think of it as business instead of something so emotional. That also helps too.
And I think doing a lot of them and not thinking about that one thing, as you're saying, like get a lot out in the pipeline. And there's so many opportunities right now, it's ridiculous.
And then, the rejection letters always start out kind of the same way. So you just open it and you're like, oh, recyclement,
Yeah.
Just right away. You don't even have to read the whole thing.
So I just want to end with the end of your essay. Can I read it out loud?
Sure.
Okay. It says, the positives of having a full-time art career is being my own boss. Yeah. Making work that I believe in and that inspires and informs my new work, and investing in the best that I can be. At times, it seems indulgent, but I can't think of a better career than one where I'm pushing myself to explore new ideas and have the support of people and institutions to see these ideas through. Well said.
Oh, I didn't even know I wrote that.
Annie and everyone at Duluth Art Institute, thank you all for being here. If you want to get a book, it's right there. We split 10% of royalties. Our check, so the first check's at the 8% royalties. I actually got 2 more percentages for the second book. We're like $10.04 for the first check. And the second check was $51.42, and then it went downhill after that. The last check was $70.89. So it's not the point of that, but the point is these essays, I think, and your essay is very powerful, enable other artists to sustain their lives. Whether or not you get a book or not, we're right here, and I'll be here tomorrow from 10 to 4 if anybody wants to stop by And I'd be really happy to help you. If you are going to be here tomorrow, bring your issues. Oh, bring the 14 other questions you have. That would be awesome.